celebrates it. We were talking about it on our show this morning, Colin. It's like the Super Bowl for social media and content teams around the NFL now to see who can come up with the most creative or the the baddest video. But it's become something.
Right? If we needed any example over the last 3 weeks that the NFL is king between people standing in parking lots in Green Bay for hours upon hours to watch picks get called, to this today, this is it. The NFL is the king in this country. Cardinals, they got their schedule, obviously, as you mentioned. We already know the teams that they were playing. AFC South, NFC South, two of the easiest divisions in football over the last few years. We just know the combination of it. They had the sixth hardest schedule last year by win percentage. That was transitioning to the sixth easiest based off 2024 win percentage this year. They opened in New Orleans against the Saints. What do you think?
I don't think it's necessarily that bad. I don't think the Saints are going to be very good. They have got major question marks at their quarterback position, but I do look at it this way, Colin. Regardless if it's Jake Haener at quarterback for the Saints, Spencer Rattler, or Tyler Shuck, who they drafted in this past draft, I think an inexperienced starting quarterback is probably going to be more prepared for week one than that quarterback will be in week two or beyond, just because of tendencies and being able to study opponent film. I don't think they're going to play a great quarterback in week one. It could be worse, but it's probably a minor disadvantage to get the Saints in week one.
That's an interesting take. I was looking at it. I mean, like, you couldn't ask for a better season opener. Rookie head coach in his first game.
Sure.
Those quarterbacks aren't going to know which way is up in that game. I mean, you got just a lack of experience. That might be one of the worst rooms of quarterbacks in the NFL we've seen in quite some time. And there's been some bad ones. But you got two second-year guys with 7 combined starts and then a rookie. But I see your point, too. It's like you kind of don't know what you don't know, and they're going to have a whole lot of time to gear up for the Cardinals and nobody else after that, really.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, the Cardinals opened up in Washington against a very inexperienced quarterback in Sam Howell, and he got the better of him that day. And I know the Cardinals were inexperienced, and that was Jonathan Gannon's first game as a head coach. The rookie coach factor is there as well. Rookie quarterbacks and coaches combined don't normally do very well right off the bat.
This Saints team is projected to be the worst in the NFC based off of win totals. So there is that. And then they come back home week 2 against the Carolina Panthers. So we get back-to-back NFC South teams, neither of which are projected to be any good at all this season. And you open up at Glendale against Carolina.
You won't be facing a big, rabid Carolina fan base invading Glendale and State Farm Stadium. We know that for a fact. But for whatever reason, and it's one of the stranger things with recent Cardinals history, is the Carolina Panthers have kind of been their kryptonite. They're 1-7 in their last 8 games against the Panthers. Last year, I mean, the season basically ended in that overtime loss in Charlotte that made no sense to anybody. Even when the Cardinals have been really good, Carolina's been a sticking point on their schedule. I think getting them at home, though, will be an advantage. And I think, if you're going to look at top, first 2-week opponents around the NFL, and I haven't had a chance to look at this league-wide, I'm guessing there's not many teams opening up against back-to-back teams that lost 12 games last year. So that's a pretty good plus for the Cardinals.
Yeah, right. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone that's probably should get off to a 2-0 start as the Arizona Cardinals should. I mean, you look at the Panthers. Bryce Young looked like an NFL quarterback last year. I mean, obviously they got him T-Mac in the first round there they were the worst defense in football last year by a pretty wide margin, especially stopping the run. I mean, bad. So to not go defense in the first round, I thought was a bit interesting on Carolina's behalf there, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, for a Cardinals team that talks about how much they love to run the football, that's a nice opponent there to get things going in front of the home crowd.
Yeah, and to your point, they went offense the first round. They picked T-Mac, Teteroa McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona, in the first round. He'll make a homecoming in his second NFL game if all goes right.
All right, this is where it starts to get a little interesting. You look at week 3. They open division play in San Francisco against the Niners, and then they have week 4 against the Seahawks at home. That's a Thursday night football game. First time on Thursday night since they hosted the Saints on week 7 back in 2022. I think you look at it, though, this is kind of what jumped off to me, Vinny, is you got a short week stretch there against 2 divisional teams, and Seattle on the back half of that's playing the Saints the week prior. So they kind of have the advantage on that 2-week front of back-to-backs, if you will.
Yeah, Seattle in Glendale has never been a real good proposition for the Cardinals, so that's going to be tough. San Francisco in week 3, I fully expect. I don't know what your thoughts on San Francisco are going into the season, and we're still a ways out, but I think they're going to be way better than they were a year ago. 6-11 team, but they were ravaged by injuries. I think they'll be a much more formidable foe, and you're right, to get back-to-back early season division games, short week, not ideal.
Yeah, to your point with San Francisco, I mean, they're not going to be worse than 6-11. That's for sure. They have a lot to replace. I mean, they lost a lot of guys just with their cap situation, having to, pay Brock Purdy here. They're a big wild card to me this season. I mean, obviously we know Kyle Shanahan, and they've got loads of talent still up there in San Francisco. But yeah, they're going to be an interesting one this year. Projected at 10 wins. You taking the over on that?
That's a pretty big jump, because they did lose talent too, and they're seemingly going in a different direction. They said goodbye to some guys that were really important on the defensive side of the ball, and Greenlaw and Ward and guys like that. But they brought some guys back offensively. I think San Francisco could be a 9 or 10 win team.
All right, let's go to week 5 here. Home game against the Titans and the number 1 overall pick, rookie quarterback Cam Ward out of Miami. I guess nice time early in the season. You always want to see those rookie quarterbacks earlier in the schedule. So there's another one right there that they get.
Yeah, we thought the Cardinals were getting a break last year when they got Jaden Daniels and the Commanders coming into town early. And, well, Jaden kind of ruined that plan. And he ruined it for a lot of other teams, I think, throughout the season. Tennessee's not a very good football team. Cam Ward does represent a major upgrade for them at the quarterback position. I'm very curious to see what they look like. I think they're way better than a 3-win team this year, but that's a game I think the Cardinals should be able to win at home.
And then they go on the road here at the Colts, week 6. That's an early kick. Their one in New Orleans is also an early kick out there. And then week 7, Packers home game right before the bye week, October 19th. You brought up the crowd of Carolina. It's not going to be baby blue in Glendale, but there's going to be a lot of cheeseheads in green there on October 19th.
Yeah, that's the one game that stands out. And Dan Bickley and I were joking about that on the air too. It's like, there's Cardinals fans that purchase season tickets and they use it as an opportunity to make a little money, to recoup their money. They got one opportunity basically to do this and really stick it to an opposing fan, and that's when Green Bay comes in. Green Bay also represents the only pre-bye opponent that was in the playoffs a year ago at 11-6. I mean, they play some bad teams out of the bat. And I think when you look at weeks 1 through 7 before the bye, Collin, that is certainly an opportunity, I think, for the Cardinals. It's almost imperative that they've got to stack wins at that point of their schedule.
What would you be happy with? 5-2, certainly. 4-3. Are you okay with 4-3 through the first 7?
I'd be ecstatic with 5-2. 4-3 would be acceptable. You start creeping into 3-4 territory, I think that's a tough sell going forward.
Well, especially as we get into the back half of their schedule. So
yeah,
week 8's the bye. It's actually the earliest they've had since 2020. You like where that falls in the schedule, or would you like to break up this gauntlet that we'll get into kind of further in that right out of it?
I'm usually somewhere anywhere between like week 8 and week 10, I think, is an ideal bye, because you're basically splitting your season in half. I can't stand the late bye weeks. I think that's a major disadvantage for teams that the NFL needs to address and seemingly isn't interested in addressing. So I think the Cardinals dodged the bullet there. I don't have really, the final 10 games are tough, but I don't really have a problem with the placement of the bye.
All right, out of the bye, it's actually a longer week coming out of it, because they got a Monday night game in Dallas against the Cowboys. Obviously, everyone's favorite statistic that Kyler Murray has never lost at AT&T Stadium. This Cowboys team, how do you feel about that game and the Cowboys specifically this season?
I can say I can't say much with 100% confidence about Kyler Murray week to week. I can say this: he owns the Dallas Cowboys. He owns that stadium. The Cardinals have won 3 straight in Dallas, even before Kyler got there. And I believe at least one of those was a Monday night game. Might have been Andy Dalton playing quarterback for the Cowboys that night, though. So, yeah, I do not. I think Dallas is going to be a little bit better than 7-10, but you never know. It's a total soap opera. So you never know how that's going to affect the team moving forward.
All right, so if they get out of that, then it becomes another back-to-back Seattle-San Francisco situation here. They go to the Pacific Northwest for Week 10, and then they got the Niners at home Week 11. We kind of touched on those teams already, but obviously having to play any division opponents back-to-back, so I wouldn't say ideal ever. And then you get the Florida swing here. You get Week 12 with the Jaguars in Glendale, obviously rookie head coach there. We get the Travis Hunter experience at home, which will be interesting. How are they going to play him? I don't know. I from afar, I like the Jaguars this season.
Really?
They're intriguing to me. Don't know about like. Intriguing is a better word.
If you go back not too distant in the past, I mean, that was a playoff team with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. They really struggled last year. Travis Hunter is one of the more intriguing. Intriguing is the right word to describe him because his talent level. I wonder what his workload is going to be by Week 12. And there's so much made about him playing both sides. And Jacksonville kind of swerved and said they'll introduce him on offense and sprinkle in the defense. Will he be playing a heavier dose of defense by Week 12? You would imagine so if it goes well early. So we can start projecting the Marvin Harrison Jr. against Travis Hunter matchups in the passing game. That'll be fun.
That should be a shootout in that game, I would imagine. Week 13 at Tampa Bay, the NFC South favorites. That is also an early kickoff, but it's a nice thing that it's later in the season, so you're not dealing with that hot, humid weather there. So they kind of win on the scheduling front for when that game falls in the calendar.
Yeah, weather not a factor really at all in the schedule until a little bit later on, and we'll get to that one weather game that could be affected. But Week 13 is what? That's about late November, early December. Is that what we're looking at? Yeah, that'll be a joy to be in Tampa at that point. Yeah. And I did get a kick out of you calling the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the NFC South favorites. I mean, isn't that by default every year because they're the only team in the division that really has a clue right now?
Yeah, Falcons disaster, Saints going to be a disaster, and
Carolina
can't get out.
Carolina's going to be a little bit better, I think,
unless they play the Cardinals.
Yes.
All right, Week 14. That's the first time we see the LA Rams. We get the Rams twice in the last 5 weeks of the season.
That's one of the anomalies that stands out too. You're done with your 4 games against the Niners and Seahawks before you ever get a look at the LA Rams, which is tough. And I think the Rams right now, they're the defending division champions. They've got a different look. They added some pieces. They lose Cooper Kupp, but they add Devontae Adams to the mix. I still think they are the class of the division, but you also wonder what kind of shape these teams are going to be in by Week 14. When the Cardinals saw the Rams early last year, the Rams were absolutely decimated. And then late, they saw a much healthier team, which was strange.
Obviously, Matt Stafford's still slinging it at his age. You mentioned Devontae Adams coming in there. The defense was kind of the biggest improvement. That was a big unknown last year. I thought they greatly overexceeded expectations, and I would imagine they'll take another jump this year. So Sean McVay, they're always going to be a well-coached football team. Week 15 at the Texans, another early kick. Every non-division game that they have on the road is an early window, which I know it's not the East Coast, but we know how the Cardinals' track record is in those early kickoffs. CJ Stroud had a bad year last year for his standards based off his rookie season. I would imagine is going to have a massive bounce back year this year.
Yeah, the bar was high for him, and I know that's the tendency to say he was bad. I think you corrected it. It wasn't up to his rookie standard. This could be a huge breakout year for CJ Stroud. They had some injury issues last year as well at the receiver position, but I think he's really good. And I think the Houston Texans are kind of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the AFC South. They're the division favorite by default, almost. That's a tough matchup, especially in Week 15.
We can pencil the Texans into that Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely, every year. Yep. The first wild card game is always the Houston Texans. It's their spot. Every playoff game they've ever played in the first round has been in that time slot.
It's one of my more favorite sports nuggets when it comes to the NFL.
Yes,
just every time. But yeah, Texans. I mean, they'll be a decent team this year once again. D'Amico Ryans, I think he's shown in 2 years he's a pretty dang good football coach, and he's going to have them ready to play. Week 16, the Falcons. They're a mess. Like, no other way to say it. I mean, I
Yes.
don't understand the direction of this football team.
When you're paying your backup quarterback $100 million, I mean, I think being called a mess is a fair label to put on them. I was impressed with Michael Penix Jr. last year when he took over. I didn't know how his skill set would translate to the pros. I mean, he played a long time, played a lot of college football, and was an older rookie. But I was impressed with him late in the season when he took over. I just don't know. I mean, Bijan Robinson, I like. Kyle Pitts, I like. But I think there's been kind of a governor on that offense for a couple of years. That being said, I think Atlanta is the second best team in the NFC South, whatever that's worth.
Not much.
Yeah.
No, you brought up Penix Jr. I mean, that remember that Commanders game where he led them back and is just throwing strikes on 4th and forever. I mean, that takes a lot out of a rookie. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's hard to see past spending that much on Kirk Cousins and then drafting a quarterback in the top 10. And then what they did this year with, I know they needed to beef up the defense, but it just seemed like mortgaging a lot of future capital to get back into a guy that had kind of a lot of question marks around him is just some head scratching decisions that don't bode well for your franchise taking a big step forward. But hey, you play in the NFC South, so I guess you have a lot of wiggle room there. All right, week 17 at the Bengals. That's the one. Obviously, the Bengals are going to be a good football team. I think Joe Burrow is going to be on a mission this year. And it's the lone cold game on the schedule in between Christmas and New Year's.
Yes. I agree with you on the Burrow front. I think he's the best quarterback the Cardinals will face this year on the schedule. I think it's a pretty favorable schedule in terms of opposition quarterback play that they'll face. But the Cincinnati Bengals did themselves no favors on the defensive side of the ball. And the way they're treating Trey Hendrickson right now in this contract standoff doesn't make any sense really on either side to me. He was their best defensive player on a defense that was really, really bad. They might be historically bad defensively this year.
Well, and making him show up actually backfired on ownership yesterday.
Yeah, because he held court while everybody was working out, and he was dragging the
20
whole
minutes,
down.
22 minutes to air out all my grievances while practice is going on in the background.
On the weather front in that game, I looked it up. Average high temperature on December 28th, the day of that game, 42 degrees is the average high temperature. Average low 26. That doesn't factor in precipitation and frozen gross stuff and all that. So that's the one game to keep an eye on.
It is kind of crazy, though, when you look at how many games they play and only have 4 games in its entirety outdoors.
Yes.
Yes. And only one cold one, and the one that was going to be in potentially a warm spot is, as we talked about with Tampa, is going to be nice down there. So that's, in terms of a weather schedule, I don't think it gets much better than this.
I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of advantages to the schedule, weather being one of them.
And then week 18, closing it out at SoFi against the LA Rams, which, I mean, for all intents and purposes, with the division kind of being all up for grabs in the NFC West, every team kind of bunched fairly closely. I think you could make an argument that any team could make a run to win it. I don't think there's any outliers. That's a big one.
It is. I don't know your thoughts on this. I'd like to pick your brain on it. No. I am not a fan of division games in week 18. And I know the reason why they exist is because the NFL will look at these potential matchups and say, oh, this could be great. Could be a ratings bonanza. But you also face the other side of it. If you've got one team that's playing for nothing or maybe doesn't want to win because they don't want to affect their draft status for next year, or one team that's already clinched might be resting starters. I just think when you only have 6 division games, they should be lumped in the middle of the season, making them all of equal importance, ideally.
I don't hate that take. I mean, yeah, to your point, like the competitive disadvantage of a team mailing it in, hurts somebody else. So I don't hate that.
I mean, I remember a week 7. I don't know if they had gone to 17 games yet, but a final regular season week where the Cardinals needed a win in LA against the Rams to make the playoffs. That was the game where Kyler Murray couldn't finish the game or was out, and he came back in, and they were facing John Wolford, was playing quarterback for the Rams, and they still couldn't.
Oh yeah.
So it was not an ideal setup for the NFL.
All right, we look at division win totals. Brought up the Niners; they were about 10.5's the Vegas number. Rams are 9.5. Cards are 8.5. Seahawks are 7.5. Where are you going with the Cards specifically on 8.5?
I went through this exercise the other day, just win-loss on based on opponents and location. And it's so much different to do it when you don't have the schedule laid out in front of you. I came up with 8. That seemed low to me. The Cardinals were an 8-win team last year, and I think they've upgraded in a lot of key areas, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So if 8.5 is the number, I feel good going over that number.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about earlier, it all depends on that start prior to the bye week. I mean, that'll tell you a lot right there. But yeah, you have to. I mean, we're year 3 of Monty and JG now, which that's typically when you need to start to see some returns from your new regime. I mean, this is going to be year 7 of Kyler now, which, as we all know, is the last year of that contract situation being less than favorable for the Arizona Cardinals. A big year for him there. They are plus 140 to make the playoffs, so Vegas isn't on board with the Cardinals. And then you look at their history, Vinny. I mean, this is a stat that just always boggles my mind when I look at it. They've been in Arizona for 37 years, and they've made the playoffs 6 times. I mean, that's just remarkable futility.
In a league that is designed for parity.
It's insane. So we know history there, but yeah, you think you look offense. I actually have more question marks about now than defense. I think they dress so much defensively. I'm excited to see that unit. I mean, we know they're going to run the ball with James Conner. Trey McBride evolved into arguably the best tight end in the NFL over the back half of last year specifically. The wide receiver position, though, I mean, I would love to see them get a veteran, experienced guy in that room. Zay Jones just isn't doing that for me. And, you know, you look at George, Michael Wilson, and Marv. I don't know your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think we were having this discussion on our show this morning, actually, about the Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray connection, and everybody's pointing at that. It needs to improve, needs to get better. And everybody assumes, all right, Marvin Harrison Jr. is just going to take a leap from the experience factor. He's been working out. He got bigger. He's stronger than he was. I have faith in that happening. But I was reading a Ben Solak article on ESPN.com, and there was also a Matt Harmon from Yahoo Sports video breakdown of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s rookie year. And the criticism really didn't go to Harrison. It went to, on one front, it went to Drew Petzing for not being creative enough in how he was utilizing Marvin Harrison Jr. And then the other half of it went to Kyler Murray, where, one of the critiques was there was a lot of times where Marvin Harrison Jr. was running wide open in the middle of the field, 15 yards downfield, and there was questions on whether or not Kyler Murray could see him. And those are questions that have dogged him his entire career. And until it's corrected, it's going to pop up. So I expect a jump. I just don't know how big it can be.
I mean, that's fair on the Kyler front. I think with Marv, there were so many drops, but more specifically, it was the jump balls that just you'd expect a guy, your star, I know he's a rookie, but to come down one-on-one situations near the goal line, a big frame, and it didn't happen last year consistently. And to me, that was the big frustration. Is like, we need those 50-50 balls. You got to have those. And it wasn't just like, he didn't lose 50-50. I mean, it was significant in terms of it was like 2080.
2080 sounds about right. About halfway through the season, I have a buddy that I worked with here in Phoenix in radio, and he's been doing radio now in Columbus, Ohio for a long time. So he's become a total Buckeye honk. But I texted him and I said, hey, how many times did Marvin Harrison Jr. come down with contested catches in his career at Ohio State? And the answer was 0. He didn't have to. He was just wide open all the time. And, he's got his second and third receivers when he was playing for the Buckeyes were all world talents as well. So everybody was running free. And it was just a matter of where the quarterback was going to go with the ball. So I think that's a big part of, the growing process is getting that experience against top flight corners in the NFL, because that's the cream of the crop. You're not going up against guys that are, playing in the UFL or maybe working real jobs now like he was in college.
Yeah. A couple primetime games this year. We had obviously the one last year. Chargers was a Monday night game on ESPN Plus streaming game. But they've got
Don't get me started.
They got the 2 primetime ones. Obviously the Seahawks week 4 at home, and then the week 9 Cowboys Monday Night Football game. No Sunday Night Football appearances since 2022 So no Sunday night love for the Cardinals. And then you look at the travel. I mean, that's always a big thing. And I mean, we're always going to see the Rams, Seahawks, Niners have a ton of travel just because of where they're situated. But the Cardinals, it's not terrible on that front.
I think
last year.
Yeah, I saw a graphic where I think they're like 10 to 12 in most miles traveled.
They're 11th most. They were 13th most last year, but it's actually 700 miles less this year. So they're kind of right in the same ballpark. It's not awful. No international games for them, obviously.
Yeah, and outside of the trip to Tampa Bay, really not any east going as far as the East Coast. Only that one time, which again, not that bad. I like the fact that they don't have any stretches. I mean, they don't have any stretches of 3 consecutive home games, but they also don't have any stretches of more than 2 road games, and those each happened twice. 5 games against playoff teams from last year, and we knew that going in. That's not a surprise with the schedule release, but this is, I think, for year 3 overall for a franchise that now, like, the honeymoon phase is over. You had a honeymoon phase where you won 4 games 2 years ago, but everybody said, wow, that team plays hard. They're responding to their head coach. We saw that growth continue in that front next year. Playoffs is the expectation this year. And I think this is I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I think this is a schedule that can help the Cardinals get to the playoffs.
It's kind of like, if you can't do it against this schedule, then when are we going to see it?
Exactly.
And again, that early stretch is massive, but then, I mean, the meat of that schedule is right out of the bye. Cowboys at Seattle, San Francisco, Jaguars at Tampa, Rams at Texans. I mean, that's your meat right there.
That's why going 5-2 in those first 7 before the bye could be really big for this team.
All right. Any more thoughts on the Cardinals? You said it's the bare minimum to get to the playoffs. Anything else on top of mind with this team?
What do we do now? Now we've seen the schedule. The draft is behind us. Free agency is behind us. What do we do now until training camp starts? I can't get that excited about OTAs. I'm sorry.
I know. I hear you. How about the holiday schedule? I'll give you that real quick.
Yes.
For those Thanksgiving folks that were very disappointed in what was not a good slate last year, the NFL made up for it this year. Packers at Lions is the morning game. Chiefs at Cowboys is your lunchtime game. Bengals at Ravens is the night game. Those are 3 great football games.
It's fantastic. I have an unpopular take on this front too. Yes, everybody complains when the matchups aren't great, but it's Thanksgiving. Like, you can.
We're supposed
to. Do you really want to put your
Browns and?
No, but I mean, you're spending time with family. Maybe you can't have the same level of attention you would have if it was like, Packers Falcons on Thanksgiving Day. These are prime, like, really attractive matchups. So, there's going to be a lot of shunned family members this year, not only on Thanksgiving, but also on Christmas, because those matchups are great too.
Okay. Here's an unpopular take for you. I do not like the NFL on Christmas.
I don't either.
If it was one game, that's fine. But this whole trying to make it Thanksgiving and hold the holiday hostage that's long been an NBA holiday. Like, this is where I'm like, the NFL, you need to pump the brakes here.
It just shows what did Mark Cuban say years and years ago about the NFL and their greed? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, I think was something. It was along those lines. I'm probably butchering the quote, but it was about the NFL's quest to just dominate every part of the calendar, and certainly by infringing on what has been a big day for the NBA. That seems to be their quest, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, they got the Cowboys and the Chiefs both double dipping on the big holidays. They got Cowboys at Commanders on Christmas. Lions are also double dipping. Lions at Vikings, and then Broncos at Chiefs. And Black Friday, for those interested, Bears at Eagles. Bears got a lot of primetime love this year, I thought. The NFL's all in, or the networks are all in on Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson combo.
I kind of get it. The Ben Johnson factor is a big one. There's some. I thought the Bears were going to be way better than they were last year. I think there was some growing pains, but there's weapons to work with for Caleb Williams. He's an exciting talent. I don't hate the Bears being on primetime that much.
Is that fair? Fair. All right. Last thing, we got 7 international games. Oh, that's another hill I'm willing to die on. Too many. 4 in London is way too much.
How about Minnesota playing back-to-back weeks in Europe? How does that affect their schedule and preparation?
I think that's a good thing for them, actually.
Really?
You just get to stay over there. And more importantly, what they avoid is 2 road games on their schedule at Pittsburgh and at Cleveland.
True.
If I can play the Steelers in Dublin instead of Pittsburgh and the Browns in London instead of the Dog Pound and the Wind up there, I'll do that any day.
But it seems like the league ramps up their efforts to reach new countries, new fan bases every year. They're playing at 5 different countries this year. At what point does it lead to something permanent? Because I think logistically it doesn't work. People say, oh, add a team in London or add 2 teams in London. Logistically, it wouldn't work. You would need a full division, a European division of the NFL to make it feasible, I think. So maybe this is the way to go. It's just going to increase, or people have brought up the possibility as well. Eventually, we're going to get an 18-game regular season. Does every game, you get every team participating in 1 international game. That would be a way to even it out and maybe make it more palatable. But I could do without the international games. The only thing I like about it is if you're a real junkie, it creates another television window for you at like 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning where you can fire up NFL Network and watch a game where you normally couldn't.
The Cardinals, do you like that they don't get those generally, just from a team success standpoint, not dealing with the travel logistics? I mean, I know they had the Mexico City one against the Niners a few years back, but
they did, and they played a game in England as well that did not go well. That was Carson Palmer's last game as Cardinals quarterback. He broke his arm in that game, and they got shut out by the Rams. I'm torn on it. I think there was a lot of the fan base that enjoyed it because they made the trip. If you're not traveling to the game, it doesn't affect too much. But the Cardinals haven't been a team that's been the darlings of the NFL for a while either.
We'll see if that changes this year.
Favorable schedule. It has the potential to. Yep.
Got to do it. Got to have a big year out of Kyler. Year 7. It's time.
7 years is long enough. Is that what you're saying?
It's not all on him, but at the same time,
yes,
you're the franchise guy getting paid like the franchise guy. We can't have the second half, fall off a cliff statistically.
And how many times can you remember going into a quarterback's 7th year? Was there still this? Is he good or is he not? There's half the fan base that convinced he's great, half the fan base that convinced he's got to go. That doesn't happen in the NFL.
No.
But it's been that consistently down the middle, and that's Kyler Murray's performance. So he's kind of responsible for it.
I mean, we all can talk till we're blue in the face at the water cooler, wherever, about Kyler, and everyone's got a very passionate opinion about it. Mine is he's a guy that is, I think, unquestionably a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. When you just start naming guys, it's like you start to find guys you struggle to get beyond that. Top 10, I think you can kind of look there, but
yeah, I think he's played stretches of football where he's been unquestionably top 10, but hasn't been able to stay there. That should be the goal this year, to be one of those guys throughout the year.
Yep. All right, we'll wrap right there. We agree, though. Playoffs are bust for the Arizona Cardinals in 2025.
Yes, and over 8.5, right?
Over. Thanks, Vinny. Thanks, guys, for watching.
It was fun. Thank you.